Hi again everyone, it's Monday, so I'm back with another Monday make. I had a great weekend crafting with a group of ladies on Saturday. We made some fantastic projects from using lots of different products from the Occasions catalogue and enjoyed lots of treats for afternoon tea, and it was loads of fun, and it has really inspired me to get crafting this week and do even more. So I'm going to kick off with sharing a couple of different ways that you can use the Heartfelt Blooms set. So this is one of the free sets that you can earn during celebration, and I've seen it used loads and loads where it's just been stamped all in one solid colour, which looks absolutely beautiful because of all the shading and detail in the stamp image. But I also wanted to try it using multiple colours on the stamp. So today I'm going to share a couple of different ways that you can colour using this stamp. So the first way that I'm going to show you is with using sponge daubers. So I've got my stamp here, and I've got several colours and coordinating sponge daubers to go with them, and what I'm going to do is just sponge the colour onto the stamp in various places where I want it. So I'm going to start off with my So Saffron here, and I'm just adding it to the stamp where I want those colours to be. So in this case with the saffron, I'm using it on the centres of my flowers, and I'm also going to add a little bit up on this flower up here as well, and then in the centre of this flower here. Now you will get a little bit of overlap of colour doing it this way, but that's absolutely fine. You'll see that once it's stamped, you won't really notice it too much at all, and it is just a lovely way of adding loads of colour to your stamp. So now I'm coming in with a little bit of lemon lime twist, which I'm just going to add to these little, I think they're chrysanthemums, I'm not sure, these little ones up in the corner here. And I'm also going to add that just to this little piece up here as well. And on to the next colour, which is Old Olive. And this time I'm going to add it to my larger leaves over here. And you just want to ink it up until it's quite obvious where the ink is with your daubers, so you can just add it in as you go and build up more colour. If you don't think it's quite dark enough, then just add a little bit more. It's no big problem. Get a couple of these ink pads out of the way before I go and put my fist in them or something. And so for my largest flowers, I'm going to use the Berry Burst. And where I've got the saffron, I'm just going to carefully go in around the edges. So it's not to cover the saffron, but it should just blend in quite nicely with the centre of the flower here. So you could use just a couple of colours, you could use several colours like I'm doing, entirely up to you. And you could add additional shading by using sort of a darker and a lighter pink, for example, whatever you wanted to do. Alright, so now we're ready to stamp it down. Because it has taken me a couple of minutes to colour the whole image, we're going to just huff on the stamp before we stamp it down. So just as you would if you were colouring a stamp with Stampin' Right markers, you just huff a little bit of breath on it before you stamp it. And then we're going to stamp it straight down onto our cardstock here. And when I remove the stamp, you'll see we've got this really lovely variegated colour on our image. Now you can see in a couple of places, you know, a little bit of the colour mixed over. Really doesn't matter. It turns out beautifully regardless. and I think it looks really, really pretty. So let's turn this one into a card. So I'm just going to quickly clean this stamp because I want to use the same image on my background of my card. So I'm just going to quickly clean it off. My Stampin' Scrubs are all in the wash today. They're all wet, so I'm using wipes today. I don't normally, but for the purposes of this. And so I'm going to start off just by stamping the top half of some crumb cake cardstock, just at the top here, and using a little bit of Sahara Sand ink. You could use crumb cake instead if you wanted to. I'm going Sahara Sand because I just wanted it to be a little bit softer than the crumb cake would give me. So I'm just adding a little bit just on the top here, because the rest of the card is going to be covered in just a moment with the other layers that we're putting on. So I'm going to set this to the side, and I'm going to bring this piece back in. And I also have a piece of old olive cardstock that I've cut, and I've just run it through my stripes embossing folder. This is also in the Occasions catalogue, and I've used this a lot so far. This is a really great versatile embossing folder. You can never go wrong with stripes. So I'm just going to adhere these two together. I'm just using a little bit of tear-in tape. And I'm just going to adhere it just over this piece of old olive here, like so. And now I'm going to add some twine. Before I adhere onto the card, I want to add some of the linen thread, I should call it. So I'm just going to add a generous bit of linen thread around here, and tie a bow. And as always, you just need to have a bit of a play with your bows until they sit just how you want them to. Like so. So now I can go ahead and adhere this to my card front that I've already prepared. So good old multi-purpose adhesive this time. Now I'm sorry about all the shadows that you might be seeing in this video today. It is a really wet and dreary day in Wellington today. So my lovely big window in my craft room that normally gives me loads of just perfect light for filming and photographing is a little bit dull today. Okay, so we're just going to make sure that that adheres nice and strongly. And we're just going to move it to the side for a moment while we stamp a sentiment to go on the card. So I've just got a little bit of rose red cardstock. Now I used Berry Burst on my stamp here, but when I popped the Berry Burst cardstock for this layer of the card, it just looked a little bit too bright. It needed toning down a little, so that's why I went for the rose red instead. I think sometimes it's easy to forget all of our favourite colours that have been around for quite a long time, but rose red has always been a good favourite of mine. Any other lovers of rose red out there? Still one of my bests. And I'm just going to stamp my sentiment on here. Simple thank you. And I'm going to adhere it onto my card using some Stampin' Dimensionals, of course. Nice little bit of height. I'm just going to layer that across here. And there's our finished card. So that is one way that you can colour this Heartfelt Blooms stamp. So using your sponge daubers in multiple colours. And now the second way that I want to show you is using our watercolour pencils. So I've already stamped my piece of cardstock, and I just used some smoky slate ink, but you could just as easily use crumb cake, Sahara sand, anything a little bit paler. And you can see, even just stamping it just like that, how beautiful that image looks. I mean, it really is just lovely. But we're going to go and add a little bit of colour. So using our watercolour pencils. And all I do is, I didn't want a really sharp colour, so I just ran my pencil off on some scratch paper first to get rid of the really sharp edge. And then you can just softly go in and follow the image. And what I like to do is I first of all just get a layer of colour down first, just really lightly over my whole flower. And I'm using the Melon Mambo pencil, which you would think would be too bright for this, but because it's pencil, you've got quite a lot of control over how much colour you put down. You can get it very, very pale just to start off with. So I'm just adding just a light layer of colour all the way across. Like so. And you can see how pretty this is looking already. Now I'm not going to colour the whole image, I'm just going to show you this one flower, and you'll have to imagine me colouring the rest of it, but I am going to show you the finished results. So just my light colour, a light shade around the whole flower first. And now I can come in and I can start adding a little bit of darker shading. And this is where the stamp design is great, because it actually shows you where to add your extra shading. So wherever the stamp has a little bit of extra shading, I'm going to go a little bit heavier with my pencil. Oops, probably not quite that heavy there, but that's alright, it will blend out in a moment. And down at the base of each petal you can add a little bit more shading. And then I also like to just outline it. So give it a nice strong outline, and that just defines each of those individual petals a little more. And you can add a little bit more shading. And so you're just going to build your colour up until you're happy with your result. And as always, yours is not going to look exactly the same as mine. It's not going to look exactly the same as you did it last time. It's always going to be a little bit different, and they're all right. There's no right or wrong. Everything, so long as it looks good to your eye and you're happy with it, then it's perfect. Okay, so once you've gone around and done all of your detailing with that same one colour, then if you want to add more detail, you can go in with a slightly darker colour. So in this case, it's the Rich Razzleberry watercolour pencil. And you can just do the same thing again, just adding in a little bit of highlights, bit of extra depth where you want a little bit more colour. And that gives you that nice sort of two-tone effect in the stamp as well. So you would just carry on colouring the whole image, greens, yellows, whatever colours you wanted to add in. And when you've finished colouring it all, it might look something like this. So this is one that I just coloured with my pencils as well. And if you don't want to leave it just brushed with your pencil, you can also go in with your blender pen and just tone out some of the pencil if you want to as well, and just blend those colours together a little more. So never be afraid to use your blender pen as well on there if you want to. So that's 2 ways of colouring with the Heartfelt Blooms set, and 2 different cards, similar but different. And that's this week's Monday Make. I hope you enjoy it and that it inspires you to get in your craft room this week. And I'll see you all again next Monday. Bye.